All right. So we already started some of the service. So thank you all for giving. There's a video that I'm making right now. So you all helped as well by your donations and stuff to get us translated within English from Tweet. So it took a little while to get that done, but I found somebody to do it, and I'm working on that now. So you'll hear how the tribe in Ghana, even though they're doing pagan stuff now, they even talk about their heritage coming from their lineage coming from Israel. So you'll see the reason why things are like it is. And then the website, still working on that. And always, if you want to give something, thank you for all the donations and things of that nature. And anytime you want to reach out, I had some people. We get a lot of spam, but I have had a couple of people reach out through this. So always let me know. Also, if you know somebody who's interested in fellowshipping with us. Um, all right. So we should spread the shofar. We should blow the shofar. Hallelujah. And then the words that we use. We're getting better with these. I see some of you using them, so that's how you learn. It's by using the words. And I did find out that there's a guy in Ghana that knows we the Israelites, and he's trying to teach a class around ancient Hebrew. So we'll see how his class goes and how it's all set up. So I might put it out on the WhatsApp to see if anybody is interested. But it's really about utilizing these words in your regular conversation to remember them. So if you're not using them, it's going to be hard to remember. So and that's why I put the ones around the family. So you kind of play around with those words with your family members. Even some of my kids, they use some of these words back to me now. So it's fun. All right, and then we know that one's the Hebrew and some of it's the Aramaic, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. Is it Ab or Abba? Abba is the Aramaic, Ab is the Hebrew, and you'll see some of the conversations that we've been having in the WhatsApp, and I mentioned some of this as well. All right, but we won't go through all this today. And same thing, yeah. So we even learned about Yahushua. So why they added the second phrase. So if you've been keeping up with WhatsApp, you will see where that comes from. So I appreciate all the questions because that helps us to learn more. So all right, and we know that it's strange that it doesn't show the little scribble scrabble stuff that I had in there. It shows it different when we show it on the projector. But nevertheless, we know when we pray, we turn to Jerusalem, and I'm hearing a lot of talk about this for some reason recently. I don't know if it got into my algorithm in YouTube, but a lot of videos have been popping up about this and how people are, turning, even like during funerals, they turn their bodies towards the east because of Jerusalem, and some of those conversations, synagogues, and how they're basically set up, to pray towards. They say the east, I say Jerusalem. Because if you're in the east, you're supposed to, I guess, pray towards the west. Because depending upon where you position in Jerusalem, it might be north, it might be south. So we know that some of the people that defiled Yah prayed to the east, and they had their backsides to the temple. So we have to make sure. That's why I say Jerusalem, not just the east. All right. And we just had prayer, and we'll talk about the scriptures as we go about it, just because we're having a shorter service. So we did the prayer earlier. And we're going to have praise and worship by my wife.
You ought to have been there when Yah saved me. You ought to have been there when He gave me the victory. He put joy down in my soul. He wrote the name on the heavenly road. You ought to have been there when Yah saved me. You ought to have been there when Yah saved me. You ought to have been there when He gave me the victory. He put joy down in my soul. He wrote the name on the heavenly road. You ought to have been there when Yah saved me. You ought to have been there. when I got saved. I never had a feeling like that. And off my days, he put joy down in my soul. He wrote the name on the heavenly throne. You are been there when God saved me. You are been there when God saved me. You are been there when He gave me the victory. He put joy down in my soul. He wrote my name on the heavenly roll. You ought to been there when God saved me.
Hallelujah. All righty. All right. So the Hebrew heritage fact. So we're still talking about Israel through the Black church, and hopefully that was helpful. I sent the old slides. I didn't realize I sent the old slides, but I have to update it with the newer ones because this has a little bit more information than the ones I started off with that I sent in the chat, in the WhatsApp. But it's just amazing as we see through even the Black church of how we transitioned during slavery, how we had Israel connection or Israelite connections even back then that was acknowledged, but now that has been lost. Seems like a lot in a lot of our congregations and within our people. So we talked about the CME and the AME, and we talked about the Baptist last time, and this time we're going to talk a little bit more about Kojic. So Church of God in Christ. So it starts off really with this guy named Reverend William Christian. It's interesting he got the last name Christian there. But he was a ex-slave, became a Baptist minister. So we see it in the Baptist once again. And he was preaching in Arkansas, and he was frustrated on how blacks were dealing with Christianity after we basically received our freedom. And thought that it needed to be simpled down, basically, because he thought, a lot of the stuff, basically like we're saying, right? There's a lot of stuff that's within that we pulled out from the church that was just too complicated to understand. It's like, the Bible is right here before us. We should be able to understand what the Bible says because it's sitting right there before us. You should read it. But sometimes we have so many questions and confusion because of the doctrines, and even in the awakening, right? There's so many different doctrines and misunderstandings that it pulls us so far away because we're not just reading what's there before us. We get caught up in a lot of the things, that's been taught to us versus what we see. But according to Christians, on the day of Pentecost, sinners asked the apostles what they must do to be saved. And Peter replied, repent. And what does repent mean? Turn away from sin. And we make it so hard, right? What does it mean to turn away? Now we don't know what sin is. We don't know what the law is. We so confused. It's like, just repent. You know what you're doing that's wrong. Repent from it. So that's when he dropped the Baptists. Felt like they and the Methodists were too reserved, right? Saying, and Methodist means you have a method for worship. That's why they call it Methodist, because it's a method. And you can see there's a lot more religious, ceremonies and practices within the Methodists. Even today, you see a lot of some of the churches they'll bring up, have a little altar boy with the candle and lights the candle, even in the Black churches and stuff like that. But then you have the sprinkling versus the baptism, and a lot of things that the Methodists basically did. But he liked the emotional style of worship since it resembles slaves' religious practice. So you can see even some groups kind of trying to understand what does Black worship look like, biblical worship, right? So you can see even among us, we got so many different feelings, even in the Christian church, right? You got people who shout, people that run around, people that don't, people that get caught in the spirit. There's a lot of those things that's in the different churches, that people know that that's a black church, just because of the style of worship versus other churches. And it's interesting because when I went to my, our Ethiopian friend brother that came and spoke with us, when I went to his church, Ethiopian church, they were out there, not shouting the same way as us, but they were shouting, and it was like, where did they get this from? If it's, since they even come to America, it just shows you there's something connected through that lineage, right? That, like David danced and some of the things there that we've been taught now to hold in emotion. Because when they actually colonized Africa, they said anything that the Africans were doing, they made it seem bad. Like, even my son, when he went to a Christian school, they said playing drums were bad. But yet they had a marching band. But if you play drums, like then we talked about the tambourine, right? Tambourine is a drum with cymbals on the side. Some of them don't even have the little cymbals there. So they said clapping was bad, like clapping. So they used to slap their legs or something. That looked strange to me, right? They said growing beards was bad. It's like, wait a minute, that's going back to the Israelite, right? That's some of our culture and our tradition. So that's the kind of stuff that we dealt with, even as we was coming out of slavery and start becoming our own. And we still had regulations put on us in America that restrained or restricted the way that we worship. And they even had, I don't know if you've seen church drive, they call them church drivers. They had somebody who's white that used to be in the midst of the congregation listening, try to make sure that everybody was doing stuff right, even within the churches, black churches. Especially after Nat Turner and Denmark Vesey revolted, they know it came through the church. So a lot of the early preachers, were the ones that were the slave rebellions that led a lot of those. So it's just amazing to me how we got so far from that now, where they don't even want to talk about social issues within the church now. They say that's wrong now. A lot of churches where that's all we knew about. Really, the church helped us. Even like we talked about the Sunday schools where we learned how to read English, right? So it's just amazing how we got so far away from that. But he felt like the Spirit released people from their desires to sin with spiritual gifts. Now, one thing I do want to mention is that he was a Mason. So a lot of these early Israelite or even early Christians, just like we talked about with Richard Allen and the AME, he was a Mason. Charles Mason, who we're going to talk about, Kojic, he was a Mason. So you can see that there was a strong connections to Masonry. Like Martin Luther King's father was a Mason. He was in the frat. So we see a lot of that, and you can see how it actually, from my understanding, Masonry came to America through the Black Moors. The Moors were black, so the Moors actually came here and they actually brought Masonry with them. And some of them could have been Jews, because a lot of the Masons believe in Kabbalah, and that's the Jewish occult. So, all right, so that's Picture Webb. This is his book, his little pamphlet. He used to make pamphlets and so forth. And this is what he says in some of his pamphlets. I can't read all this, so I put it over to the side. He says, Christ and all his brothers must have been black men, without a doubt. We black people are not a thrown away people as some of our white friends pretend we are. Job was black, Job 30:30. Jeremiah said he was black, Jeremiah 8:21. My black brother and sisters, this is a straight line from Adam to Christ, and no nobler men ever lived this side of heaven than our foreparents were, and Christ certainly came out of the black generation. So this is what he said. So how did we lose that over these years? He knew about scriptures, about being black. And like I said, we see this among many of the different Christian denominations, early black Christian denominations. They knew this stuff. So how did we lose it? All right. So he said, white people of this country love to call us, nigger and Negroes. But the word nigger appears in the Bible, but the word Negro does not appear at all unless they have the same meaning. But if the word nigger, Niger people say, but it's actually, if you hit the pronunciation in Strong's says nigger, refers to us, then we are willing to accept our kinfolks. Peter and John were a nigger. So if you look up, somebody turn to Acts 13:1 for me, please. See if I can find it as well. If you have it, just go ahead and read it. Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Now there were at Antioch in the church that were there prophets and teachers, Barnabas and Simeon, who was called Niger, and Lucius of Cyrene and Manaen, who had been brought up with Herod the Tetrarch, and Saul.
All right. So you see how they refer to him in that way. So people try to say it doesn't have the same meaning, but when you start looking at places like Nigeria and Niger, they have it in the name. So why is it the same there? But when they say in the Bible, there's a different meaning. But when you look at the meaning, it says black Christian or something like that, or zealot. But we can see why would it still refer to those people, whoever translated in that way. But William Christian actually knew that. Excuse, thank you. So you can see he had some. Ooh, what's going on? He had some things he also said about the different beliefs and some of his beliefs about black people, and he has some other beliefs, but I'm just trying to note the ones where it talks about the black people. All right, so then he had in this pamphlet, he says, "My black brothers and sisters, it's time we were opening our eyes." So like an awakening, right? He's trying to get them to awake and look out for ourselves as well as other nations. So he said, wait a minute, the other nations are important, but we are important too. And you hear that different now in a lot of Christian churches, even black Christian churches. They said, "Oh, stop worrying about who you are. It's all about us as a whole." Well, wait a minute. There's a reason why we have diverse churches. Black church, Vietnamese church, white churches, and all kind of churches now, Hispanic churches. But those are people who are identifying to the Messiah with their culture. So if we're the original people, why is it wrong for us to identify through our culture as the black church used to do? All right. So it starts off, he has this little song here at the bottom. And this is basically this text right here. He says, "Oh, come, all ye scattered race." So he acknowledged, as many of the scripture says, like we said in Deuteronomy 30, 30, talks about how we're scattered and how we're going to wake up where we are. And the Savior's love and embrace, ye may see his smiling face, yet with care he is on the giving hand. Will you come at his commands? And you'll with the angels stand over there. Over there, over there. There is a land of pure delight over there. We will lay our burdens down and at Jesus' side sit down, and we'll wear a starry crown over there. So he's talking about going back to the land. So this is a Christian, Reverend William Christian. His name is Christian, and he's basically talking about this way back then. So this is the COGIC founder, Charles Mason. He's the one who founded COGIC, the biggest Protestant, I think the biggest Protestant denomination in the world is, black, to a black man, COGIC. And this is their book. This is a COGIC book. I wish I remember to put the name of the book up here. But you can see it says, while Baptist doctrine reinforced what he saw as the moral compromise of the church, Baptist doctrine would have to withstand the scrutiny of the scriptures as taught by the Black Restorationists. So you see there's a group called the Black Restorationists. William Christian and his Black Restorationist movement provided the first shift within Mason's Black Baptist faith during the early 1800s. So you see that William Christian Mason was basically like a mentor to Charles Mason. And then at the time, Mason was a Black Baptist. So before he started doing coaching, Church of God in Christ. So drawing upon the larger restorationist movement of William Campbell and Barton Stone, William Christian's motto was "No creed but Christ, no what it says book but the Bible." So you can see how some of his changes with Christians is affecting other people as well. And there's some other names would be interesting to research if people had time to do so. William Christian's theology of the races. This would you read that?
This about
would you read that? I can't see.
Yeah, this is about racial prejudice and advanced racial equality, undergirded by Genesis theory, enlarged the origins of the African race and the biblical creation story, and identified Africans as the majority of the biblical peoples, including the Hebrews. It espoused the creation of the Asian and European races as separate events. You want to read all of it? His theology of the races refuted the interpretation of the Hamitic curse as the genesis of Black inferiority by redefining the curse as an intra-African, not interracial affair. Thus, he espoused racial inequality by countering white racial superiority without substituting it with Black racial superiority. Between 1893 and 1897, Mason adopted a focus on clean or holy life and the primacy of scripture over denominational doctrine. In 1894 and 1895, Mason's association with the Black Restorationist movement was coupled with his enrollment in the Ministers Institute of the Arkansas Baptist College, where he taught Baptist doctrine, trained in the practice of ministry in an academic context, and graduated in 1895.
So we see that his early beginnings was through the Black Restoration. And that was started by William Christian, right? And you saw what William Christian believed. So you can see why they do Holy Convocation in the Kojic Church, right? That's going back to what we just did with unleavened bread, right? The first day was a Holy Convocation. The last day was a Holy Convocation. Actually, from my understanding, they used to actually do Passover in the early beginnings of this movement as well. So how did they lose all that, right? And then he converted. And even when I posted this on Facebook a long time ago, some Black people were talking about how even, their parents helped him. And some white Jews said that they helped him too. So what are they doing early in the beginning of this movement? Some of their parents or grandparents were helping him as he established this. So that's just amazing to me, right? So this, you can see this is also comes from JSTOR, where it has a lot of academic articles there. And it says, in the beginning, there stood two Arkansas roots of the Black holiness movement. And would you read that right there? It's definitely too small for you to read.
This was part of a more general movement. The Arkansas Gazette recorded the flight from Shelby County, reporting on December 12, 1879, that 1,000 Blacks from Tennessee had settled in Conway County. Mason's parents believed they were like the Israelites described in the book of Exodus, lost and in search of a place where they could prosper.
Okay, so you can see that even his parents had some connection, even though it doesn't say if it was truly like a heritage standpoint or a similarity, but you can see even before he connected with William Christian, his parents already had some type of understanding about a connection to the Israelites, feeling, as they moved around from place to place. All right. And then this is Ben Amin. So he's the one that basically was in Chicago, and he said he had a vision, and the vision said that we were the Israelites. So he basically took a group of people from Chicago, went to Liberia, and in Liberia, they basically got all the Western stuff out of them, right? They were trying to get all the Western stuff. I mean, some of them people left because they couldn't do it. And I heard some people had some issues, something about a war or something. I don't know if that was during that time where actually they left, but they had some division. But eventually they moved to Israel. And that's before Israel had the right of return. Well, they had the right of return for anybody. Now they changed it, where they said only certain people could come if you halakha and all this other stuff. But they got there before that. So these are the people who end up moving. I think they actually got put to Tel Arad. And that's why I talk about how some people say that that was the original temple that's there in Tel Aviv, and then they moved to Dimona. So that's where the war, they're talking about the nuclear facility, and Iran is talking about bombing the nuclear facility to blow up a lot of Israel, right? We talked about that, talking about the wilderness and um, what's the place that's in the wilderness? What's the other word for wilderness? It's in Hebrew. Hmm, we use it a lot. What did I talk? Gaza or I can't think of the other place. Hmm, I can't think of the other place where we talked about in the Bible. There's a word that means wilderness, but I can't think of what it is right now. Top of it. But
Is it Negev?
Negev, thank you. Yes, the Negev. Thank you. Appreciate it. Negev. All right, so you can see, but he was influenced by some of these people. So, Angel, did you read that for me?
The whole thing.
Just stop right there.
Okay. Who is this rock that the church had become unmindful of, that is lightly esteemed in their minds? At the turn of the century, a body of men began to move in the southern United States, attempting to resurrect the church upon the rock of truth, God Almighty. These men, Bishop Charles Mason of Mississippi, William S. Crowley of Virginia, Bishop William Boone of Tennessee, Bishop C.P. Jones of Mississippi, and Elder Saint Samuel of Tennessee initially included in their teachings that Africans in America were descendants of the biblical Israelites.
So these are, Bishop Charles Mason, we just talked about that, right? William Crowley, remember we talked about the church, the Church of God and Saints in Christ, the ones that wear like the ribbons and stuff like that, that's here in North Carolina, that's where they come from. I don't know who William Boone, Tennessee is. Bishop C.P. Jones, he did a lot of the gospel songs, the old time gospel songs. He wrote a lot of those, and he was one of the early leaders. I don't know who Saint Samuel, Tennessee is, but they all taught that African Americans were biblical Israelites. So these are some of the early, people call people fathers or beginners of the Black church movement, and you can see how they believed that they were biblical Israelites, at least based upon the testimony that Ben Amin said that inspired him as he moved to Israel. Would you read? So I see something about Church of God in Christ. Read the rest of that.
Their theological instructions encompassed the law, instruction of God, and the teachings of Jesus. They understood that the resurrected church had to keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. They gave their churches the proper name, the Church of God in Christ, which I interpret to mean the Church of God with the testimony of Jesus. The original beliefs of these men were soon polluted with strange doctrine, which caused these churches to slowly turn away to a more acceptable preachment in order to receive the stamp of approval.
So he's saying that this is basically what happened, how we lost it. So, like I said about the other church, how, the northern Christians came and said they had to send missionaries to the southern Black Christians to get us out of the Old Testament Christianity to the New Testament Christianity. So we talked about that last week with Denmark Vesey and other people. So you can see how some of the situations were changed and rearranged. And he said the Church of God in Christ, right? So you also heard the Church of God and Saints in Christ. You heard the Church of God. So you hear all these different variations of that name, and you can see how they were all connected in some way with some of these early movements. All right. And this is Cambridge University. It says from 1900s onwards, North and South Carolina were overrun by Black preachers who were propagating a doctrine according to which the lost tribe of the house of Israel was none other than the Negroes. So this is Cambridge University talking about, there was a time right after emancipation that here in North Carolina, as we saw in some of the other things that we covered, there was Black preachers saying that we were lost house, we were the house of Israel, and in South Carolina, as we talked about as well. Although this might at first sight seem an odd claim, it can be seen as reflecting the beliefs that some black slaves had held during their captivity when they were interrogated on their origin. So some black slaves basically said they were Israelites when they were interrogated during their captivity. So we can see how a lot of this was connected as well, to slavery. So even before all these men, we already had this understanding going on as soon as we came over to America. All right, so this is another one. This is Prophet Cherry, they called him, and he was just straight up. And he had a petition that he used to hang around saying that he would challenge anybody about who we were, and he would pay money if you can disprove it. And remember, money there wasn't like $1,000 is what, like 10,000 or 100,000 like now, right? So this is what he basically hung on the door. And Angel, you read that for me?
Just
I
a
know.
little.
Oh, you can read it. Go ahead. Thank you.
Prophet F.S. Cherry has declared that the black people in America that were called Negroes, called people of or shines, are not any of these names. The people are the original Ethiopian Hebrews. Prophet Cherry stated that he is ready to go before kings, presidents, judges, state attorneys, Supreme Court, or anywhere in the world to prove that the black people are not Negroes, and this name must be abolished. Prophet Cherry is giving $1,000 to anyone, whether lawyer, doctor, preacher, teacher, judge, or anyone white or black that can prove his statement wrong. This $1,000 and carefare will be a gift and will be paid in any court before a judge, high court, or Supreme Court within 24 hours by proving that we are not the original Jews by the Holy Bible, which has the beginning of all things. We are descendants of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the first Jew. We, the sons and daughters of Jacob, do not have any pictures taken, neither do we swear. Prophet Cherry is paying $10,000 for the picture of Jesus Christ or any other prophet. $1,000 we pay to anyone to prove that anyone can go to the second or third heaven where Jesus Christ went after death, or any other time. The land of Canaan is our home. Meetings every Sunday, Wednesday, and Friday at 8 o'clock, all Saturday until sundown. But miss the great mess. Don't miss the great messages. You are at liberty to ask any questions during the lessons. Here you will learn yourself and who you are and where you are from, and many things about the forefathers and our history.
Thank you. So you can see he was straight up. And I don't think nobody ever challenged him and got this money from him. But you see, he said, we are the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the first Jews. And he calls us the Ethiopian Hebrews. So that's why I had, my brother come and speak about the Ethiopians and their connection back to the Israelites. So you can see, all this was going on way back then, and this is in Philadelphia, right? And then, there's one right now, they're more of a connected to camps and stuff, but they got $1 million petition right now that anybody can do the same thing. $1 million if you can disprove of who we are. So, and nobody has made that, challenge them in that area as well. And let me see. Frank Church he was born in Tennessee, so it goes back to the Tennessee connection there. You just saw all those other people were connected to Tennessee. And this has happened in 1886. And he started 2 churches, the Church of the Living God, Pillow Ground of the Truth for All Nations. We used to have them super long names back then. So one of these groups, Prophet Cherry's Church of the Living God, the Pillar of Christ, of Truth for All Nations, is the oldest known Black Judaic sect. That's very important. It was originally established in Chattanooga, Tennessee in 1886. Prophet Cherry argued they were part of the original Israelite tribe chased from Babylon. This is important as you go through the genealogy class. It's like, why Babylon? And they claim into Central and West Africa, where they were later sold into slavery. So it shows you how they got forced to Central and West Africa. So we'll talk about that as well in the genealogy class. By the Romans in 70 AD. So it shows you that they had a connection, at least teaching the same thing we teaching now way back then. All right, so this is just the first blacks of Israel Hill. So there was this town called Israel Hill. I think we went over this before. I think the plug's not all the way in. So it talks about how these, people who are basically given freedom. Is it pushed all the way in? Okay. Talks about the cousin of Thomas Jefferson, Richard Randolph, and after they're given their freedom, they call themselves Israelites. Some people say it's because they just connected to the Israelites and their, what was going on with them. But you can see that the people of Thomas Jefferson, he got his slaves from, some of his, parents and in-laws. But some of the people that he got were from Igbo, were Igbo slaves. Who knows that we're the Jews now? So, his cousin would have probably got inherited slaves as well. And to me, that would be very interesting to research. So I'm trying to reach out to some of the people, at the museum to talk a little bit about that so we can get more clarity. So that's the reason why Memoket Kohanim and all that you all give is so important, so we can make sure we are not just chasing after just some stories, but we're chasing after truth. Right. So but also, where it says New Bern, North Carolina. So remember, they said there was a lot of ministers coming out saying that we're Israelites. So we had this Bishop R.A. Johnson. I think I might have talked about this. But this is 1876, 1940. And he's the founder of the House of God, Holy Church of the Living God, the pillar and the ground of the truth, the house of prayer for all people. So names keep on getting longer and longer. A commandment talking about the Sabbath, keeping Pentecostal organization. So this is Pentecostals that's doing this. And he's keeping the Sabbath. And I definitely can't read that. Can anybody online read that piece? See, how do you do the little Zoom thing?
It's not highlighted. Go down to the right. Go to the left.
Which one? Wait, I can read it.
I'm gonna try to make it a little make it a little bigger. All right. Yes, would you read this little section here? Yeah, there's another.
Okay,
right
I got you.
Yes.
Another. I'm not gonna miss that.
Ethiopianist Israelite.
Pioneer is R.A.R. Johnson, who was born in New Bern, North Carolina. Johnson was a. What's that? That word?
Itinerant preacher.
Who founded a church called Asylum before World War I. In 1914, Johnson founded the House of God, Holy Church. That's a very long name. The House of God, Holy Church of the Living God, the pillar of the ground of truth, the house of prayer for all people in Beaufort, South Carolina. Beaufort, South Carolina. The church was incorporated in 1918, the same year, to spread to Washington, D.C. Soon the movement spread to the West Indies, West Africa, and even South India. Johnson played a role in germination of Rafford. What's that?
I'm sorry, I was looking down at something. Where are you at?
My wife said Rastafarianism, which built on its Black Israelite predecessors and emerged in Jamaica in the early 1930s. Johnson preached 24 principles, including baptism by immersion, foot washing, women ministers, equal of races in the church, the sanctification of the Holy Spirit in accordance to the holiness practices. Church also observes some Jewish festivals, keeping the Sabbath on Saturday and obtaining from Christmas and Easter. Women wore white, including white hairdresses from Passover in the spring to Sukkot, the fall harvest festival.
Thank you. So we can see.
I know it's a coat, but hey, that made me. Hey, I know I'm reading that.
Yeah, so you can see I was already there. You see women wearing white. You can see that even in the early Black churches, they wear a lot of white, ushers and stuff like that. So that's interesting, right? I wonder. I don't think that I don't think they do that in the white churches that I've been to. I don't remember them wearing white. I mean, I've been only a few times. Well, I went a lot in college, but they didn't have a lot of other places to go. But I never remember the ushers wearing white. At least the Baptist churches that I went to. But you can see there they kept the Sabbath on Saturday. They didn't do Christmas. They didn't do Easter. And this is Pentecostal people, man. Remember, this is Pentecostal people. All right, Black Pentecostals. All right. They did Passover just like we did, and wore white just like we did. And then at the fall, the fall festivals, they wore white during the Holy Convocations and so forth. And remember, I said that Church of God in Christ did Holy Convocations, right? They call it Holy Convocations even to this day. And remember, we talked about Washington, D.C. when we talked about the CM, called them the Israel Church and called the congregation Israelite members and so forth. We can see that, right? And you can see how it went to Jamaica, right? Rastafarianism, right? That talks about the Black Israelites in Jamaica. So we know that's Bob Marley, and a lot of them were living in there. Remember, we talked about the one guy who actually, George Lilly, that left the church in Charleston, and after the Civil War, he went to Jamaica. So you can see, you wonder if that also was some influence of that as well. And they call themselves Ethiopian Israelites. So once again, connecting back to Ethiopia, because remember, Ethiopia at that time was talking about the majority of Africa, not just Abyssinia, which I thought he read, right? Yeah. He even called his first church, Johnson was the itinerant preacher who founded a church called Abyssinia. So Abyssinia was the Ethiopia we know today, but they were actually identifying with the Ethiopians, the Africans. Yes, Chris, you got a question?
I had more of a comment, really. I think, when you go over stuff, it's like mind blowing how far base things are, where we grew up and how far base they've gotten. You know what I mean? I had a conversation with my cousin. I got a cousin, I love him like a brother, but he's gay. And he's been ordained as a minister, and he wants me to come to the service. I'm not going nowhere. You know what I mean? But how far base like people believe what they believe in. Like, I'm glad that with learning the way, I've learned some Hebrew, I've learned some different things. I was like, it's like verses in the Bible, which I don't believe, but he believes. Like, it talks about he translates it different, you know what I mean? But it's been in my heart to call him, because we had a conversation the other day. He always like talk about the Bible, the Bible, the Bible. And all I can think about is when you talk about righteousness. What's the first word in that? You know what I mean? Then we read these verses, how do you apply them to your life? You know what I mean? So it's just amazing when you talk and the things that we go over that we learn, how, in my head, how far off base we've gotten, but everything is there that we were doing before, it's just mind blowing to me.
Yeah, that's what, like I said, it took me 3 years. I was trying to disprove until I start coming across stuff like this and trying to understand what happened over the years, because everybody acts like what we're doing now is something new, where it actually was the foundation of the Black church to start with. So why don't they talk about that? Now they're trying to get away from, the Black church and try to say that a lot of people are dumb and illiterate, but we see these people who have children that, were the first Blacks that completed some of the programs in history, that were great artists, that, had newspapers, and, that these were very intelligent people. So, they're trying to twist things around now, right, to make it seem like the Black church wasn't that important. And it was very important. But, what happened to it? Going back, looking at from the beginning to now, like you said, what are these things that affected it in their traditions and their teachings and their beliefs to a point now that we don't even remember how they were original around this time. So this is New Bern, right? So you see how, and then I found one of his papers. This is basically them establishing a church, and this is coming from Florida. What's it say?
Florida.
Oh, it says Florida, okay. It says Florida, right? So they're establishing a church, but they're establishing in Charlottesville, Virginia. So they're establishing, they're going from one place and they're starting a church in other places. They're growing. right? And this is that long name somewhere up here. I can't see this too well. Huh?
Zoom in like you did.
Let's see, maybe somewhere up here.
Yeah, that go Commandment Keepers, Holy Church of the Living God.
Yeah, you can't even put on one line. This is the denomination. Commandment Keepers, Holy Church of the Living God, Milligram, Truth, House of Prayer for all people, holiness. So you can see they were playing around with that name. And you know, let me see, names and locations, denominational governing bodies, national, state, district, etc. In descending order of importance, Commandment Keepers, Holy Church of the Living God, Pillar of Truth, the long name. And you see Reverend R.A.R. Johnson, Bishop, and you see them starting in Charlottesville. So it'll be interesting to see if they have, it says P.O. Box, Charlottesville. So maybe that's where they had the business, even though they were in Jacksonville, Florida. Maybe they were established in Florida, but they had the business established in Charlottesville, Virginia. But you see, 1902. That's when they were coming about here. And then we can see here other church records excluding of items, whatever, 21A, B, and C to item 22. Note, this congregation is of the holiness movement. So we see a lot of holiness churches, right? So I wonder if this is where that holiness kind of thought was first established. But different from them in that they keep the seventh day as Sabbath, which accounts for the name Commandment Keepers or evangelical reasons. This group began its work in this city in 1902 by the pioneer members authorized by the General Convention of Convocation of Charlottesville, Virginia. So yeah, I guess it was in Charlottesville, Virginia they started, and now they're doing it in Florida. So it's very interesting that they talk about that 7th day as the Sabbath. That was the difference between some of the holiness movements. So there was a split where some kept the 7th day, and then some of them, I guess, went to the 1st day. All right, so we can see records, of it. And now this guy, Arthur Talmadge Abernathy, PhD, he was racist, but he had this book, The Jew, a Negro. You can get it for 99 cents off Amazon. It's probably free somewhere else. But you can see that, he was born around 1872 in North Carolina. I don't know where Worcester College is, but that was the name of the town that he was. It was named after college. So, you can do some research if you're interested. Talks about his family, and let me see. By the age of 9, teaching himself telegraphy. And by the age of 9 and passing exams to get A.B. degree from Rutgers at the age of 14. So very smart. He was denied this degree, however, due to his age. He remained at Bristol College, becoming a professor of Latin in 1887, making him one of the youngest professors in the nation. Teaching there for several years, already a Latin and Greek scholar. He went on to receive his A.M. degree from Trinity College. Now what? Duke University. So before Duke University was called Duke University, it was called Trinity College, and this guy was there as a scholar. In 1891, and his doctoral degree from Johns Hopkins University. So he's a doctor, and he's talking about the Jews are Negro. The Jew and Negro. So we talk about this guy, right? So there's a lot of black pastors were going around North Carolina teaching that we were the Israelites. You see, he's a Baptist, an AME. He went to so many different churches here in North Carolina, even in Philadelphia, the other one. Yeah, Pennsylvania, Alabama, Tennessee. Sounds like some of the same places that we talked about before. And he taught that the Bible history of the Negro, as we read previously. So, and this is later William S. Crowder founded the Church of God and Saints of Christ in 1896 in Lawrence, Kansas. Crowder taught that blacks were the heirs of the lost tribes of Israel, while white Jews were descendants of interracial marriages between Israelites and white Christians. That's what he taught. But Crowder is the one, Chris, that you were talking about. You had family members in the Church of God and Saints of Christ. So if you know about Crowder, find out about Crowder. He said he got a vision from God, and he was told that they were Israelites, and so forth. But like I said, that they're connected a lot to masonry as well. We have them right here in North Carolina. So yes, that's where a lot of the history comes from, and like the bigger slide, I had even more information talking about Louisiana and the tribe of Judah and a whole bunch of other stuff. But you can see how the Black church has to give an account for where did this teaching go? How do we lose our relationship as Israel and teachings of that nature? So that's why I wanted to share it with you all, so you can go, whenever you have those conversations, ask your family about it if they have concerns about, you being part of the Israelite movement or something like that. We know we're Israelite through our ethnicity, but our teachings and lessons, we, just as diverse, it's just like saying, instead of saying black, like, some of those early people say the problem should say you're black, that's a color. What are you? Like, what is your heritage? We're Israelites. Even if the Israelites went astray from the Bible and did their own thing, but they were still Israelites. So we're still Israelites now, but we're coming to understanding, and they're Israelites because they're not just a color, right? So they got to know what their ethnicity is. If they can't tell you before slavery what they were, then they might need to also seek out and figure out if prophecy is in the making. Hallelujah. So we have a song by my wife.
What a mighty God we serve. What a mighty God we serve. Angels bow before him. Heaven and earth adore him. What a mighty God we serve. What a mighty God we serve. What a mighty God we serve. Angels bow before him. Heaven and earth adore him. What a mighty God we serve. We serve. We serve. What a mighty God we serve. Angels bow before him. Heaven and earth adore him. What a mighty God we serve. We serve. We serve. We serve. We serve. Angels bow before him. Heaven and earth adore him. What a mighty God we serve.
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah.
All right. So we don't really have a lot of time to go into a lot of it. So what I decided to do, so we won't lose track, we'll just try to go through some of the words that we already know. Right. So I took the words off this time, so gonna have to actually be able to figure out what the word is. So does anybody got any of the words? Anybody know the first word?
Is that father?
Aleph Tav Resh.
But this right here? Anybody know what this one is? What's
Are
the
you
word?
pointing? Because I can't.
Oh, you can't see it. Oh, okay. I thought y'all could see my point.
The first one on the
The
left.
first one on the left. I'm sorry.
I can see it. It's law.
Okay, law. And then what does law mean? Anybody?
Not.
Not. All right. You got the graduate today. She's standing strong. My baby, my daughter. That's my daughter.
Yay!
All right. Anybody know what this one is? Olive and Mem. Anybody know what that means?
Mother.
Mother. So is mother. Remember, all this is around, well, most of it is around the 10 Commandments. All right, and then we have the ones around the Aleph and Bet. That's Ab. Anybody knows what that is?
Father.
Good, father. Yes. The strong person of the house, the protector, right? One that holds up the tent. Just like the mother is the strong glue, the one that keeps people together. All right, keeps the family together. All right, so we got. Anybody knows what letter this is? Looks like a foot. So
Gam.
gam, like a camel. Foot, gam, camel. All right, we got noon, and then we got bet. So that's, if you put an A in between all that, the knob, all right. Does anybody know what that means or remember?
Still.
Yes, the one that you basically, somebody's walking out with this means heir or inheritance, right? So somebody's walking out with the inheritance from the house. So somebody's stealing your stuff. All right. So we have this one. Anybody know what this means?
Harag.
Harag is the word. Yes. So the first letter is hey. You see somebody like praising hey. So you see the resh, that's the head, and then you see the camel's foot again. That's the gam, or think about camel, cam or gam. The old word was gam. So we can. What does that mean? What does that look like? Anybody know? It's like a spirit removes from somebody's body, spirit of a man out of their body. What do you think that means? How do you remove a spirit from somebody's body? Anybody? Anybody want to guess?
Murder.
Murder or close. So remember, we thought it was murder too at first, but this is, what's the other word for murder? You close. So instead of murdering somebody, you do what? Starts with a K.
Oh, you kill him. I'm
Kill
saying
'em.
kill.
Yes,
You
kill.
can't hear me. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, kill. That means kill. All right, you take the spirit from a body that makes it walk out. All right. So this is the little seed means noon. So then you have the head of an ox is strength, right? That's L, or some people say olive now. And then you have a mouth, so that's pay. So we have, anybody know what that word is? If you basically put an A in between, but this already has an A. So what is this? Nah.
No.
What does nah mean? Anybody?
Adultery.
Adultery. Right? So I always say this is just something I made up, but the inheritance was got to put a strong mouth against it. So how people talk about adultery. So talk about the mouth, somebody speaking against the something strong that came between the seed, inheritance. So adultery, that's the seed. All right, so we have this right here. We have the het. That looks like a ladder. I know some of y'all might haven't had this before, so that's the reason. We've been going through this like for 3 years, so we had different people come and go. So we have the het, that's a ladder. We have mem, that's water. And then we have like a D, a dollar, dal. That's basically, people say dalit in more modern Hebrew. So we have, sometimes it makes a CH sound. So kamad or hamad. Does anybody know what that means? Um, yes, covet, yes. So, you kind of think about those on the outside, that means outside like a gate. In the blood, because the covenant was based on blood, was able to enter into the door. So those from the outside through the blood enter the door. So the covenant. That's what you said.
I said covet.
Covenant.
Mhm.
Wait a minute. Covenant. Let me see. Covenant. Is that covenant?
I think. I don't know.
Yes, it is. It
Oh,
is. 'Cause I always get this one and the other one confused. Covenant. So you coveting something. What do we say with this one? I can't remember when we went through the word. You remember?
okay.
Covet for the word covet. How do we remember this based upon the letters? Wanting something from the outside.
Going outside the walls, I think.
One
It's
outside.
something like that. Oh,
I gotta remember how we came up with covet for this. And then we have the head, which the strength of the something strong, so that's L. And then we have hay, and then we have bet. So anybody want to try to say that? Basically AHAB. Anybody know that word? AHAB? Anybody want to guess? All right, a hob. Anybody knows what a hob means?
love.
Love. A hob, love. All right. Then we have this one. I think y'all can figure this one out. Somebody help me out. So we have the the CH or the basically the het, right? Then we have the noon, then we have the cough, and then we have hey. So or yeah, let's just say ha na ka. Anybody know what that means? Hanaka. Hana.
Dedication.
Dedication. Hanukkah. Basically Hanukkah. Then we have this one. It's basically the shin, the bet, and the tav. So
Shabbat.
thank you, Shabbat. All right, Shabbat. Go ahead. All right. Then we have this one. The what's that? Zan. The Zan's like a. You kind of think about it like if you put a mule in between, kind of like a little thing that they use to plow with the mule and they hold on to it. It also could be a weapon, Zan. And then we have the cough, I think. My eyes is not seeing that well, but the cough, the hand that's open, and the resh. So that is just put a Z A za K A R. Zakar. Zakar. And what does that mean?
Remember.
Remember. So you kind of think about that can mean nurture or to open, to cut open, to cut. This means open. Cut open the head. So you got to put something in the head. You're entering something in the head. You're opening up your head or opening up your mind. So then you have this one, which means you got the head, which is resh. You got the Sadi, which is kind of like a path. You see the man kind of walking out the door, leg kind of pulling out the door like a path or a journey. And then you have the gate, which is outside or on the other side, right? So think about a man going on a journey on the outside, very similar to the one that we talked about earlier about, the life of a man walking out. This is very similar. The man going on the journey on the outside. So it's not kill, but what was the other word?
Murder.
Murder, yes, thank you. Thou shalt not murder. Then we have this right here. So we have the head, which is L or R sound. Then we have the tav, which is T, which means a mark or a sign. And then we have the hey. So if you say that, A-T-A-H, what would that be? Anybody want to guess? I know we're short for time, so that's why I'm kind of going through it quick. But anybody know what that is?
No, sir, but I know what the second one is though. Up under that.
Okay. A tie. A tie. So when we say a hob, when we said a hob, a tie means what?
I love you.
I love you. All right. So that means you love you, right? So some people say Baruch atah, bless you, right? All right. So all right, we got Akudi Parthenia. She's going strong. So we got the hey, we got the
I
sin, the thorn, and the lam.
The
You
idol.
trying to say it again, please?
idol.
Idol, yes, for Saul. That's idol. That's the idol. So the idol, the Saul. Thou shalt not worship idol. Have no other. I don't create graven images, graven idols, right? And then we have the shin and the mem. So shin, like the S or SH, M and the M. Shem or Shem.
Name.
Name, yes. Go ahead. All right. And now we have the Kuf, and we have the Dalit, and we have the what did you say?
Oh, this.
Not sin, but what did you say? Shem, right? Not Shem. What's the W looking thing? I'm drawing a blank. I just said it, but I'm drawing a blank now. Shin. Okay. So we have Kadesh. Anybody know what Kadesh means?
Holy.
Holy, yes. Kadesh, holy. So then we have what they call the God back in the day, but they call it Ayin now. And then you have the door. So somebody looking in the door, somebody's watching. What would you call that? If you talk about the Ten Commandments? A witness. A witness. Because they're witnessing what's going on. They're looking at what's going on. All right, and that's I. All right. And then we have the shin, the kaf, and the noon. So shin, kaf, and noon. We have the shakan. Anybody know what that means? Shakan?
Neighbor.
Neighbor, right? The one that presses, yes, presses. Let me see, presses. What's the other one for? I can't think. Towards the press close towards the inheritance or the ones that's living. So like the neighbor, ones that's living close to you, pressing close to you. All right, and then we have this one. Hopefully somebody gets this one. This is L, the Lam, the Het, and the Mem. Anybody? L, La, oh, I hit the thing. Elohim. Anybody? Elohim. Everybody know what that means?
God.
God. Thank you. So we have the Kuf, the Dalit, and the Bet. So we got the Kadab. Kadab. Anybody know what that means? Kadab. So that's the, I want to say that's command, right?
That's what I was thinking.
I think that's command. Just thinking about open the door of the house. Open the door of the house. Yeah, I think that's command. And then we have the hey, the bet, and the lam,
Oh,
hobble. Oh no,
I
this
mean,
is the hand in front of the door of the house. This is
the dog.
this is one means false and one means vain. I can't remember. This means false. That means false. Yeah, the hand that's in front of the door, you know, like somebody's waving their hand in front of the door that's not really there, like trying to trick you to come out the house. It's a false sign. All right. And then this one is vain, because you got the spirit, you know, that's not real. Bet, that's the house. And lam is like learning, leader, that kind of thing. So you think about the false, something false, that around the house that is kind of leading you astray, right? So vain is a vain thing to do. It's not real. That's why I think about this being like a spirit. All right, and then we have the yod, the hand, the arm, basically. We have the kuf again, and we have the resh. So the car, and it's kind of like somebody giving somebody flowers. So who would you give flowers to? When you're giving somebody flowers, that's the head. You're doing honor. You're honoring them. All right. Then the last one, we have the sadi, we have the wa, and we have the hey. So sawa. And what does that mean?
I thought that was command.
That is command.
Oh, command.
Yeah, that's command. But we said this this one, that was right. That was bad. That's command. Sure, yeah, that's command. And we always get confused with the covenant. Right, so
All
all right, let's see. These are all the words. So, you know, if you want to do a screenshot of that and practice. So this is how we're going through the 10 Commandments. And if you remember these words, you'll remember the 10 Commandments that we've been going through. So we went through thou shalt not steal and thou shalt not murder already. So we only got 9 more. So these words are going to be important. Well, most of them, like, you know, this just came up because we were doing Hanukkah at the time. So that's not, and don't get confused between kill and murder like we did. So it's thou shalt not murder, not thou shalt not kill. All right. Any questions on that? I know some of y'all have never seen this new and so forth, but you know, we've been going through this over and over, and as you see, we mess up. So always feel free to mess up with us. But that's how you learn. When you try, you start learning. All right. All right, so we have the lesson for the day, and that's how we're going to end out. We just have a shorter service since we are having the graduations day. All right, any questions up to this point on anything that we went over? All right, so the lesson for the day. All right, so we were talking about the different groups that was included in the covenant. And we went through the different ones, but we started with the Israelites and we talked about how they were important when they entered into the covenant and what did that mean. We talked about the proselytes, the ones that basically weren't of Israel, but yet they took circumcision and they were treated just like the natural born. We talked about the strangers and the sojourners, so the ones that lived among the Israelites, even though they didn't actually go through circumcision and one part of, you know, they were still included as part of the covenant of Deuteronomy 29. And that was a covenant that was not conditional. So you can see that. Then we stopped last week talking about the Hellenized Israelites, those Israelites that were taken over by the Greeks. during Alexander the Great's time, and they gave up their customs to follow the Hellenite. Well, Hellen means Greek, so that's really what their name was, Hellen. But I think it was the Romans or somebody who called them Greeks or something, how they start getting referred to as Greeks. But the Hellenes were the ones that Hellenized, that's what Alexander the Great wanted, is for them to Hellenize all the nations with their culture. And we can see that's going on even to this day. And then we start halfway in that, and now we're going to talk about the Hellenized. We'll finish the Hellenized and talk about the God-fearers, because all this is important since we're entering into the time where we're going to talk about Romans, we're going to talk about the law. And if you don't understand who the book or the conversation was geared to, you will lose track and understanding of what the law was and what the covenant was. Why Paul is saying this, why is he making these different distinctions between people, is because of this. You got all these different people now that actually are coming to be a part of what's going on. And they saw that the Messiah, Yahushua, had died, so now they want to be a part of that. But remember, they don't have apps, Bible apps. They don't have Bibles like we do that, it was expensive to have books. So they, how did they come to an understanding of being a part of what Yahushua did for all those who were receiving, right? So that's what we're talking about now. And we went through the Israelites already, how they were established. We went through the proselytes, the strangers, and we started with the Hellenized ones, Israelites. But we can see during the time of Maccabees, that's what we're talking about. So if you know about Maccabees, that's the right reason why we do Hanukkah, to talk about what happened during that time, not to forget what's going on and how we're the temple now, and it changed from the physical temple to this, us being the temple of Yah. That's why you said, know you not that you're the temple of Yah, that the Spirit of Yah dwells within you. Anyone defiles the temple, him shall Yah destroy. For the temple, your body of Yah is holy, which you are. All right. So we talked about all the stuff that they start doing, fraternities and all that stuff, and how they open up the barrels and all that stuff. That's also in Maccabees. And this is the Jewish historian that was talking about basically it's the same thing that's in Maccabees. And they basically opened up the gymnasiums and they start teaching the youth about, all these sports and things. And what happened was to pull them away, end up pulling them away from serving in the temple, neglecting their duties at the temple to take part in the exercises. And, it basically was a challenge to their spiritual self that they focus more on the acceptance of the things of the world. Not saying that it's wrong with sports or anything, but we can see how sports sometimes overcome and activities overcome children's spiritual discipline. And what's the parents of, their parents will focus a lot on the things of the world, right, to get them advanced, but they won't focus on any of the spiritual things that's going to keep them rooted and grounded when they really need it when the world comes and attacks them. So we can see that's the reason why Noah, during the time the world had to be destroyed, because, the generations that came after them got worse and worse and worse, right? But nevertheless, so this is a book. I did add this part. I try to hurry up and add it today, so please forgive me if it's not all in place. But this is a book, African American Fraternities and Sororities, The Legacy and Vision. And this is actually written, this is a pro-frat book. She's actually in a frat, but she's talking to you about the history and the legacy and where it comes from. So this is a book that I bought early to try to get a better understanding of what's going on. And we can see that, remember, this is a pro-frat book, right? So this is a book that they are teaching about. But it says, although certain perpetuations of an African aesthetic by Black Greek letter organizations, that's below, might have been unconscious, an understanding of Egypt's connections to Africa clearly was not. All 8 organizations drew clear connections to Egypt. So remember, Yah said, don't go to Egypt. Don't go back to the Egyptian gods, right? Their original names, colors, icons, symbols, rituals, language, and overt connections to Greek deities of Egyptian origin. How can you have a Greek deity of Egypt? Because Alexander the Great, when he actually took over Egypt, he changed the Egyptian gods into Greek gods. So you can see how there's some connections there, right? It's like, why are black people going around with Greek symbols on their chest, but yet they say they're connected to Egyptian gods? That's because that was what's going on during that time of Hellenization. Origin could, in some instances, be viewed as a continuation of the masculine traditions so vital to African oral traditions, literature, and music. So you can see they talk about African Methodist Episcopal, right? So we talked about Richard Allen was a Mason and stuff, but nevertheless, let's see. So it talks about the connection of the Alpha, Tau, Theta, Omega. I guess that's what you say. I don't know how to say all these things. We didn't have fractal stuff at Campbell, so not at the time I went there. I think I got it now. But you see, the yearbook also lists pyramid, obelisk, and other Egyptian icons as a symbol for Alpha, Theta, Omega. So you can see how they were connected a lot with obelisk. That's actually like, like the Washington Monument, right? And it's actually found in Egypt. And basically, the whole history is that the god basically got cut up in pieces, I think, by his brother. And his wife found all his body pieces that were scattered throughout the earth, except for the male organ. Let's put it that way. And that's what the male organ is that obelisk. And that's what you're seeing. So, when we have it in Washington, D.C., and they have its connection to that, it's actually a symbol of fertility. But they have connections to it. So we know this stuff is not Yah of Yah, right? Yah doesn't want you to do this stuff. He said, get away from this kind of stuff, right? And then we have the portion here. Let's see, is that right? Oh, no, that's wrong. I didn't get it. Oh, let's stop that.
Don't you?
Let's stop.
Let's hit escape.
That didn't work.
Go to the megaphone.
All right. Sorry about that. I hit the wrong button. Can y'all still hear me?
Okay.
All right. Just want to make sure y'all can still hear me. All right. Sorry about that. I don't know what screen y'all seeing. So
It's that one.
Can y'all see my screen? All right.
Okay.
So, thank you. So, in this section, we can see the men of Alpha Phi Alpha laid further claim by naming their national magazine the Sphinx, right? And the woman of Delta Sigma Theta selected the Greek goddess Minerva. So they know it's a Greek goddess. So why does Israelites wouldn't have goddesses among them, right? So that's why it's so important for us to identify with Yah versus Greek organizations that have their gods of, says it. Minerva as their icon, although this choice was outwardly European, so we're still getting influenced by the same Hellenized culture that was going on during the time. But this is a pro-frat book, right? They're basically pushing these thoughts. It might have had a very different meaning since Minerva was successor to the most lauded and powerful Egyptian deity, Isis. So they know that there's this connection between Minerva and Isis. And if you know about the whole thing with the Minerva and Eastern Stars, you'll see the connection there as well. All right. And then we can see, let me see, make sure I'm not. It says all those certain perpetuations of an African aesthetic. Oh, that's what we read earlier, right? Yeah, we read earlier. And this part right here, see if I can get this. The initiates underwent purification baths. So this is like religious stuff, right? That's what we call baptism. BGLO initiates often undergo a series of trials designed to bring them from darkness to light. What? How can you do that through a Greek culture that has nothing to do with Yah, right? So it shows you there's something going on more spiritually. BGLO initiates are sent through a variation of trials during a week-long ordeal referred to as ship or H-week probation or crossing the sand. So crossing the burning sand, which are designed to test the desires to be members of the organization. So basically, you know, you're going through all these things and you're basically being like brainwashed, right? Because now you don't want to let it go. You're fighting for it, you're learning these things, and now it's kind of being placed in you. And these are the same things that they talked about that the Egyptian culture, they have it on the call Heifer, but he's basically going through these different things in order to reach the afterlife. And he has to go across the burning sand, he has to talk to the Sphinx, he has to go through, his heart has to be put on the scales of Mot. So you can see how a lot of that stuff is connected to Egyptian religious, you know, thought. The initiation process symbolized a rebirth. How can you rebirth in an Egyptian religious type of organization, right? Greek type of organization. Has nothing to do with Yah. So, you know, Yah has a rebirth that we're reborn into him, but now they have a rebirth too. After crossing the burning sands, initiations, BGLO members become Neophytes, new in the light of their organization. So, you know, even that word, if you start looking it up, I'll maybe show more about some of the stuff that they go based upon. But you can see this is the same Hellenization that was going to be happening back in what we talked about during the times of the Greeks entering into the Israelite land, right? So now we can see how this stuff is branded still in us even unto this day, because most time you see, you know, when they start talking about African Americans, historically, especially, I couldn't understand how they do this during Black History Month, because what does this have to do with Black History Month, right? You're talking about European associations during Black History Month, right? So, and this is the book what talks about basically, and this is the first, all this is in the first chapter. So all this is in the first chapter of the book. You don't even have to read but one chapter of the book to understand what's going on. But it says in some BGLO choices regarding nomenclature, iconography, organizational structure, core values, pledge practices, performance, chapters, locales, and in programs of service have direct links to African religious practices, secret societies, and title association, aesthetics, philosophy, values, and educational norms. So they tell you right there that has a religious content to the Black, and it's not Yah. So, you know, he said, put the other gods from me, right? So it says recent research shows Masonic and other fraternal orders, African secret societies, title association, Kemetic Egyptian, and West African cosmology and pedology, and the African aesthetics have all contributed to the ritualistic behavior and core values of Black Greek letter organizations. So just shows you, you know, they're just telling you. There's no question about it. So you can even see a lot of Christians now. If you just search YouTube, just say frats and sororities and people coming out, you see a lot of them coming out of it as well. So this is not just like a Israelite thing, but you can see how it's just wrong. So let me see. Thomas Robinson's popular internet disseminated message about Egyptian burial rites identified many of them. So that's what I was talking about, including a popular lexicon of crossing the burning sand, which was used by all Black Greek lettered organizations to denote the place of testing. This practice was also part of Masonic and African testing, and the crossing was also difficult. So Robson notes that the Egyptian believed that as the deceased journeyed toward the new world, they were led by the stars and the crescent moon, a Phi Beta Sigma icon. First, they crossed a desert, after which they reached a place of testing, and the now outlawed BGLO practice of crossing the sands, and the end of the formal pledge period and the beginning of the probation, the final week before admittance to the full membership, is therefore viewed as an African retention. So we can see that a lot of these things connect back to, you know, a lot of the African Egyptian connections to their religion and going to the underworld, you know, hell, basically, in our understanding. And I wish I had the picture, but I'll have to show you later on. But you can just Google I think Heifer going to the underworld. You'll see they talk about it in schools too, and you see all the things that he had to go through in order to get to the afterlife. And Isis and what's my man name with the one eye? What's the god with the one eye? Horus. Horus is taking them to what's the big god of the Egyptian? Horus and I can't think of the name of the Osiris. Horus is basically taking Osiris to basically taking Heifer to Osiris in the is the picture. So with that said, you can see a lot of the connections of why now you got these Israelites that have these things in them and how they have lost their culture. I think we saw some of the stuff in the chat for WhatsApp. You can see how they lost their language. So that's the reason why we have the Septuagint now. A lot of people you hear talk about the Septuagint book. And the Septuagint basically had to be created because the Israelites lost their language and they couldn't speak. So they had to translate it into Greek way back in the BCs so the people could understand who they are. So we're basically like that now, right? We have to get the Bible translated into English so we can find out about who we are in our culture. So you can see how it's basically a foreshadowing of what we're doing now, how we're trying to get back to who we were. And that's what was going on in the book of Acts. So, you know, you got to understand that because Paul is going to be talking to people. And how do you have to understand the culture? Who's he talking to? Why is he saying these things? What is going on, right? So we talked a little bit about this, I think, before we stopped last week. And you can see, you know, we were talking about the word Grecian and how it gets confusing when you're just talking about the word Grecian in itself, because Grecian can mean the descendant of Javan in the Old Testament or a Greek-speaking Jew in the New Testament. Two completely different things, and it just uses one word. So we talked about Gentile also could mean Gentile, heathen, nation, people, you know, it can mean a troop of animals. You just use that, see that word, you get all confused, right? So you got to look at like what the Greek word or the Hebrew word under these words, so you can understand what truly they're trying to say, because it could change. Just because you see an English word doesn't mean that's what the meaning of the word is in the context of Greek or in Hebrew. So when you see, we talked about, you know, Grecian can mean Helen, right? We talked about especially a non-Jew who's basically part of a Greek-speaking people. You can see the word ethnos meaning race. It means anybody that's not basically non-Israelite, I would say, especially if they're pagan. It can also, like we said, you know, a holy nation. You know, talking about Israelite, that we are Mamleket Kohanim, a kingdom of priests, a holy nation. So basically saying that we are Kadesh Goy, Kadesh holy Gentiles. But it's not using it in the word as a Gentile being a non-Israelite. It's just saying that we're a nation, as in the word Goy, a nation that's holy. So you got to really understand. So that's why I think a lot of people in our community get so caught up and divided, because they're trying to use the word in one way versus understanding the base word that keeps us back together. And these are some of the different interpretations, because you can see even the word Jew means descendant of Judean, of Judah, basically, or it can mean in the New Testament, you'll see the word, I can't say this, Idaeos, which means a Judean, means that, you know, it could mean that a person that's from the land, or it could actually mean somebody who is an Israelite. So it starts to get confusing as you go to the New Testament. And here are some of the things. It says in John 7:35, then said the Jews among themselves. So those that basically were of Judea. But remember, at this point, we can have you have the Pharisees, Sadducees, Essenes, Herodians, all these different people that call themselves Jews. So it's not just the descendants from Judah, but those who basically, you know, even like the Benjamites are called, you know, Jews, right? But even though they come from the tribe of Benjamin, because they were part of the southern tribe that stayed back when the kingdom was divided. But Jews among themselves, whither will he go? Will he shall not find him? Will he go until the disperse among the Gentiles, the Hellen? Right? So when it says Gentiles, it's talking about the Greeks. Will he go among the Greek-speaking non-Israelites and teach the non-speaking Greek Israelites? So this is talking about the Messiah when he was leaving, right? Who they were wondering when he said that where I go, you won't be with me, or you cannot come. So this is what he was basically that they were thinking among themselves. All right. So this is another example, and this goes back into what we just talked about, the Hellen period. In Acts 6:1, it says, in those days, when the number of the disciples were multiplied, there arose a murmuring of the Grecians, the Hellenistes, the Greek-speaking Jews, not Greeks as in people coming from the Hellenes, the Greek people that are not Israelites. These are the Israelites that got lost their customs because they got caught up in the Hellen culture, right? So the Greek Israelites against the Hebrews, the ones that basically always kept their culture and their identity. So they're still all Israelites. So some people would switch that around, make it seem like it's the Gentiles versus the Israelites, but it's really the Greek-speaking Israelites versus the always native-born, stayed with their custom Israelites. Because their widows were neglected in the daily ministration. So this is where you get Stephen and what they call the deacons that came forth. So, you can see what was going on during that time. So they were basically getting divided among themselves. The ones like us who know our customs, and you can say the ones that, African Americans that are against us, our customs, or versus the ones that know the customs, but we still all the same people. All right. So hopefully that kind of helps you. Let me see. This is another one, Acts 9:21. And he spake boldly in the name of Yahusha and disputed against the Grecians, the Hellenistes, so his own people who got pulled within the Greek culture. But they went about to slay him. So you can see how that was a big division among them as well. Those who believed in Yahusha and those who were Grecians that wanted to hold on to the worldly customs. All right. Any questions about this? Does this help any?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
So every time you see those words, it's gonna mean the same.
Means something different, right? So just because you see Grecian, Grecian means the same thing, but Gentiles can mean 5 different things. So just when you read the word Gentile, make sure you know the root word. Because the root word is going to help you to understand the context of how it's being used. And this is especially for the New Testament. Old Testament, you got to have a different thought than some of the words you use in the New Testament as well. So
use the blue letter Bible and find out the root.
Yes. Okay. And it gets even more important because if you use Septuagint, even the Old Testament is in Greek. So, if you can figure out the Greek side, you can read both the Old and New Testament based on the Septuagint and make sure the same word is being used. One example is rabbi or teacher. If you start looking at a lot of people get confused, even me, like it says, don't call no man a rabbi. And people are like, oh, that just means teacher. But if you take the Greek word, you go look it up in the Old Testament based on the Septuagint, see it's a different word than just the word teacher that people tried to make it plain to be the same. Yes, Brother Chris.
It's me, Parthenia, but I have
Oh,
a
yes.
question. I have a question for you and Sister Deidre. So as we were sitting here learning everything new, my name is Greek. And no, we are Black from North Carolina. However, I want to know what my name means. And I was just telling Chris as you were going over everything, like everything means something different. So therefore, Gentiles, when we don't say Gentiles, when we see it in the blue letter, it'll say Helene. So I'm saying,
Yes.
I'm trying to think that my name is in the Bible, or is it? Because if you Google it, I Googled it one time, it was in there. But then I don't believe that my name is in the Bible. And now that I really know how to read the word, I just wanted to talk to y'all about it. We ain't got to do it today because baby girl graduated today. But another day, I want to talk about it. But I need to ask you guys about it before I forget about it, okay?
No problem. Let's see. Let's look real quick. I don't have my keyboard right here in front of me, so I'm just Googling on my phone since you can't see me. Let's see. Okay, so it is a word. It's Strong's 3932. It doesn't give me the actual verse. So let me go to another one.
There's an Asian version, ancient Greek.
There's a show scripture.
Say something.
But things say it don't show a scripture.
Mhm.
And what she found.
Little strange that would be in the Strong's or not. Well, yeah, let me see. It says something here. See, there's some connection to Jeremiah 3:4 and Luke 2:36. So let's look at Luke 2:36.
It means virginity.
Means virginity. Okay. So it's probably talking about the Virgin Mary. So from a Greek standpoint, that's what it goes back to. Virginity. Talking about the virginity of the Virgin Mary. At least from a New Testament standpoint. Interesting. I didn't know that. You taught me something.
Thank you guys. It means a lot.
And then also, you could actually look up the Hebrew because now that you know the Greek, we can find out what the Hebrew word is as well. So that would be interesting to see how your name translates to Hebrew. But that might have to take a little bit more time. But I'll try to send it to you. That'd be good. Thank you. And a lot of us do have, a lot of people do have Greek names like Nike and Nicholas. Nike was the goddess. She was a goddess. So when you hear people call Nike, Nick, any of those names, it goes back to the Greek goddess Nike, usually. Like my wife, Denise, you hear Marcus. Marcus is, Mars, So you hear a lot of those names. And even in the Bible, a lot of their names were given to him, like Apollos. He was one of the apostles, right? But that goes to one of the Greek gods. So you can see how they, changed our names, or we even start adopting the societies that we lived among, like Mordecai. Mordecai goes to Marduk, like the god of Babylon or something, but he was a holy man, even though he had a Babylonian or Persian name. I can't remember which one it was. And then Esther. We talked about Esther, Ishtar, right? Ishtar was the Greek goddess, but her real name was Hadassah, was the Hebrew name. So that's the reason why you hear some people adopting Hebrew names now, right? They're changing their names or they're picking some Hebrew name. Like my name, Jay Shear, was a Hebrew name. I just didn't know it until my mom kept on saying it. But that was my middle name. So that's the reason why I went from going from my first name to my middle name, because I already had a Hebrew name. But names like Keisha, right? Keisha is a Hebrew, African Hebrew name. A lot of those names are in our culture. We just don't realize. So that's why you hear people call their names, they give their names Benaya or something like that. They'll change the name to at least give themselves a nickname to identify back to our culture. Similar to like Malcolm X, right? Malcolm X, he crossed out his name and then he changed his name to Shabazz, something Shabazz. A lot of people lost that history, but after he left the Nation of Islam, he went to change his name to Shabazz something. Shabazz or Shabazz, something. So, but names and stuff, words have meaning. So that's the reason why we need to look up the root words around some of the stuff, and we get confused to see what that meaning truly means. What the word truly means. All right. And we only have a few more minutes, so I'm gonna go over God-fearers, then we'll pick up after that because God-fearers is not that long. All right, so think about where we are right now, right? So we talked about the Israelites. They came and took the covenant of Moses. We just talked people got Hellenized during the time of Hanukkah, right? And now the Messiah came and he, died. He was buried. He resurrected. Now he goes to, ascends to be at the right hand of Yah to prepare a place for us in His kingdom. Now the disciples are around, and now all this stuff, you got all these different people, and now they're trying to make some sense of what's going on among them, right? So you can see why they had so many confusions and different beliefs, and different people leaving them, getting rebuked and all that stuff. So you have these people now in Acts 13:26. Will somebody read this for me?
Brothers and sons of Abraham's
Brethren,
family. Oh,
Ms. Deidre, I'm giving you a break.
okay, thank you.
Go ahead and read all
Brethren,
3 of them, actually.
brother and sons of, read all of them?
Yes, please.
Brother and sons of Abraham's family, and those among you who fear Yah, to us the message of salvation has been sent. Paul stood up and monitored with his hand, motioning with his hand, said, Men of Israel, and you who fear Yah, listen. Opened his mouth, Peter said, I most certainly understand how that Yah is not one to show partiality, but in every nation the man who fears him and does what is right is welcome to him.
Amen.
Right. So we can see that he first talks about in these different Paul and Peter. He says, sons of Abraham's family, talking about our people, and those who are among you who fear Yah. So who's the difference between those who are of Abraham's descendant and those who fear Yah? The God fears, Yah fears. Right? So these are usually Gentiles that saw all the stuff that happened. They noticed, Yahushua coming from, dying on the cross and all this eclipse and earthquakes and all this crazy stuff happened. They're like, oh, I want a piece of that. But remember, they don't have Bible apps. They don't have Bibles. How they learn of who Yah is, and they didn't have the culture. But yet they want to actually come into the covenant and be saved through the Messiah. But they don't have the knowledge. But they still fear Yah, right? So you can see the same thing. Men of Israel and you who fear Yah. So it's showing you there's other people outside of Israel that's fearing Yah. Those are the God fears. God fear is the more technical term. You can actually Google that and find it, but we know we call God Yah. So we call them Yah fears. All right. And then you can see those who can be saved. Open his mouth, Peter said, I most certainly stand now that Yah is not one to show partiality. Right? He doesn't care what your background is. He wants to say, but in every nation, the man who fears him and does what is right, which leads to righteousness, is welcome to him. So showing that he cares about everybody. Those who basically, as we said in the earlier scripture in Deuteronomy 29, it says those who are not of this fold or something like that, those who will come in the future, it talks about, some of these people who are like strangers and stuff among them, right? All right, and then we can actually see in the Bible in Acts 10:22, you got Cornelius. Some people try to say that he's an Israelite, but I differ. I think he is a Gentile. But it says, they said Cornelius, a centurion, a righteous and Yah-fearing man. So you can see how he's fearing, why would they call him a Yah-fearing man or God-fearing man if he was an Israelite, right? But it says, Yah-fearing man, well spoken of by the entire nation of Jews. So why would he be talked about by the entire nation of Jews if he wasn't a Jew? Just showing you that he was some kind of Gentile. Was divinely directed by a holy angel to send for you to come to his house and hear a message from him. So, and then Acts 10:45. So, we also know that this is when, Peter was given the vision of the, sheep with the animals. He said, eat. He said, I don't eat any unclean. But basically, that was about trying to get him to accept the Gentiles. That's what that was all about. So, that's what Cornelius was, Gentile. All right. Acts 10:45. So, later on, it says, all the circumcised believers, who would be the Israelites, right, or the proselytes even, who came with Peter were amazed because the gift of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, had poured out on the Gentiles also. So isn't this the same chapter, Acts 10, talking about Cornelius and his family being Gentiles? For they were hearing them speaking with tongues and exalting Yah. Then Peter answered, surely no one can refuse the water for these to be baptized, who have received the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit, just as we did, can he? And he ordered them to be baptized in the name of Yahushua HaMashiach. Then they asked to stay for a few days. So we can see that the Gentiles received the Spirit before they were even baptized. We talked about this when we were talking about baptism, right? But we can see that these are Gentiles receiving the Holy Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, just because they acknowledged who he was and wanted to enter into him. So then because of that, they acknowledged it with baptism. All right. All right. Any questions So next week, we'll talk about the one law. So we had to go through all that because now we're going to talk later on. We're going to talk next week, hopefully, y'all willing. We'll talk about the different groups and how the law applies to the different groups of the law. And then that's important because as Paul is talking, he's talking about the same thing. He's talking about how the different people apply to what happened with the Messiah, right? So you got to understand that from the Tanakh before we can go into the Brit Hadashah. Go believe it, understand what happened in the Old Testament before you go to the New Testament. All right. Any questions? All right. So with that said, we're going to try to end on this.